a place where I can be. A sweet melody rings through the hollow chest inside of me. Stars, they all start to sing, one by one echoing, leading me to believe there's more, there's more, there's more.
Hello everybody, and welcome back to my YouTube channel, Jo's Journey to Medicine. As you can see, I'm in a slightly different setting today. I'm actually in a hotel. We had a mini holiday in Suffolk, in Ipswich, which is where I grew up, so it's been really nice. I have maybe about 10 minutes to film a video, so not that long, but I received a question a couple of weeks ago underneath my video about funding and tuition fees, and there are some things from it that I wanted to talk to you about today. So the first thing that I wanted to talk to you about was additional hidden costs that are associated with being a medical student, and I thought this was a really good question because I didn't cover it at all when I talked about sort of how student funding and tuition fees works for the current year. And I realised that actually there are quite a few hidden costs when it comes to medicine. So, firstly, books. Now, I was quite lucky in that I did a medical science degree first, and that meant that actually a lot of the books that were on my reading list for my undergraduate course are the same, and if not the same, are very similar to the books that we need for medicine. I have a human physiology textbook from my undergrad, I've got a histology textbook, I've got a neuroscience textbook, and other things like molecular biology of the cell, which is quite a pure science textbook, but is in some of the lectures as recommended reading. So it's really useful to have that as well. So in terms of books, I was actually quite lucky in that I was able to buy them for my undergraduate and I still have them for medicine. Now, I do appreciate that textbooks are really expensive, and I bought them before I even started my undergraduate degree because I was one of those really keen people. But that doesn't necessarily mean that you absolutely have to buy the textbooks. University libraries are really, really good. I know throughout my undergrad and also through medicine that you don't necessarily need to buy all the textbooks because the library resources are so good, and especially nowadays there are lots of ebooks that are available through the library, PDFs and things like that, so it's not a necessity to have the textbooks, but it can be really, really useful. So at the end of the day, it does really depend on your budget and what you can afford. If I hadn't done medical science and had done a completely different degree where the textbooks weren't the same, would I have bought the recommended textbooks for medicine? Probably not. And that's just because, having done an undergraduate degree, I know how university library systems work, and so I knew that I wouldn't need to buy them because the libraries are so good at universities. And also, if you don't have the book, chances are somebody you know will have the book as well, and so you might be able to borrow it from them or photocopy a couple of pages from it if you needed to. So I probably wouldn't have bought the books, at least to start with. Throughout your time, you probably find out that you really need that specific embryology book because you struggle with embryology, and it'd be really useful for you to have the book handy at all times. That being said, I have bought a couple of books since starting medicine. I bought a surface anatomy book, which was actually written by one of our lecturers who teaches us anatomy, so it just makes sense. I've also bought a couple of Gray's Anatomy books, so I haven't bought the big Gray's Anatomy for students because I think it goes into more detail than we actually need. But what I have is a Gray's Anatomy, Gray's Basic Anatomy textbook, and it uses all the same images from Gray's Anatomy for students. It doesn't include all the extra information that, if I really wanted to, I could get from Gray's Anatomy for students inside the library. I've also bought some flashcards, some Gray's Anatomy flashcards, because that's a really good way of recalling the anatomy that we've learnt. And I've also got a review book which I haven't actually used yet. So although I already had some textbooks, I have bought some others. I wouldn't say they're absolutely necessary, but they definitely make my life a lot easier. And I know a lot of people have also bought either the same flashcards or surface anatomy books or very similar ones. I'm also thinking about investing in a clinical skills textbook, but that's something for the future. I haven't actually bought it yet. So another thing that can be seen as a hidden and additional cost when studying medicine are equipment. So obviously you will need to buy a stethoscope, and I was actually really lucky in that I was given a present to some money to put towards a stethoscope, which I am so grateful for. When you start uni or medical school, often the medical school will have a deal with a company such as MDF Instruments is a website that sell medical equipment, and MediSave. So they'll often give you a discount. Some universities, my university did that with MDF Instruments. So you will have to buy a stethoscope, and what else did we have to buy? We also had to buy like a knee hammer to test your reflexes, and we also were told that we needed to buy a pen torch. Those are the only 3 pieces of medical equipment that I have bought personally. They also say that you can buy a sphygmomanometer or a blood pressure cuff with the inflatable pump for manual blood pressures, not an electronic one. I know a couple of my friends have bought the manual blood pressure cuff, which they find really useful, especially those who haven't had experience in taking blood pressures before. But for me personally, because I've been a healthcare assistant, I've been taking blood pressures for a few years now anyway, so it's something that I don't need to worry about so much, and that's why I didn't feel the need to buy one. But again, that depends on you and what you need and what your university recommends. So another thing that can be seen as an additional cost in medical school would be petrol. And I know that sounds a little bit strange, but even from first year, you're going to be travelling to community placements or hospitals or GPs, things like that. And because of that, you're going to need a method of transportation. And you can cycle and you can take the buses, or you can car share, and obviously there isn't enough space for everyone to have their own car. But it is a lot easier if you do have your own car, and you don't need to use your car all the time. But if you're car sharing, you are going to be giving them petrol money as like a thank you for giving you a lift. So because of that, you're going to need to budget for petrol. It's not a massive amount at all. It's quite small. In fact, I find parking fees more expensive than my petrol itself. Does depend on where in the UK you are, obviously, but parking can be expensive, especially in hospitals. And so it's something that you definitely need to budget for. When I go to hospitals on Friday, for a day's parking, it's £9.60. Now I'm really lucky in that I car share with my 3 next door neighbours, who are all first year medics like I am. And that means that the price per person massively decreases. But over the course of a semester or a year, obviously it does build up in costs. So that's another cost that you might need to think about. In the questions that I received, they mentioned insurance as a possible additional cost. Now, for medical students, a lot of the insurance you get is actually free. So when it was Freshers Week, we had people come in from legal companies and things like that who provide legal support and things like that for medical students and also for fully qualified doctors. They actually provide it free for medical students a lot of the time, so it's not really something that you have to think about. You sign up for it, you fill in a form, and then you usually get a freebie as well, which is always good. We got a dictionary and some other things I can't remember off the top of my head. But yes, so you fill in a form, you sign up, and you don't really think about it for the rest of your time. Something that you might want to consider signing up for is the BMA. So the BMA you get free in your first year, and you get all the perks. So I think I get the Student BMJ magazine or journal, whatever you want to call it, and access to like BMJ website, full access. So that's really useful, and it's definitely something that I'm considering investing in the future, because it's really useful for both my learning and also general support. They have lots of really good services as well. So that's another cost that you might need to think of. It's not a massive amount of money, but again, when you are thinking about funding, it is something that you might want to consider. The last thing that I'd like to touch on quickly is IT equipment. Every single person will have their own way of taking notes, whether it be by hand using pen and paper, whether it's on a laptop or a tablet such as an iPad. Some people have lots of stationery, some people have multiple devices. Everyone is different. For me personally, I have an iPad Pro with the pencil, and I could not live without my iPad Pro. That being said, there are so many different ways. I think when it comes to budgeting for IT equipment, you know how you take notes, you know what works for you, and you're going to want to do what's best for you. And when you are buying something, you want to really make sure that you are happy with it. I spent a long time considering whether or not I wanted the iPad and needed the iPad, or whether I was just getting it for the enjoyment of it and for the games and things like that. But actually, I barely use my iPad at all for games or even social media, to be honest. I mainly use it for taking notes, textbooks, things like that, PowerPoint presentations from uni, accessing our Moodle page. So for me, my iPad is really a study device, or a device that I use only for studying. Obviously, I'll put up a TV show on it or Netflix or something like that, but it's not what I mainly use it for. So for me, my iPad and pencil would be an additional cost because I bought that specifically for university. I have another laptop, a MacBook that I use as well, but I bought that sort of for my first degree because my old laptop died. So depending on if you need a new laptop, that might be something else you might want to consider. It really depends on you, and it also depends on what operating systems you like, so Mac versus Windows, but I could go on and on about computers, so I will leave that bit there, but you might want to think about what you use and what apps you require. So I have to go now. I'm actually meeting a friend to give her some last minute support before her interview. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you found this video a little bit helpful, and I shall see you next time. Bye!